Syiria, year 750. Following their defeat at the Battle of Zab in January 25, 750, the Umayyads were either hid or fled Syria to escape the Abbasid. Most of them were captured and later killed by the new regime, including Caliph Marwan II, who fled to Egypt and assassinated there few months later. Among the surviving princes were 19-year-old Abdul Rahman ibn Muawiyah and his younger brother Yahya, grandsons of Caliph Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. They hid in a small village near the Euphrates River along with their family, mostly women and children. Until the Abbasid assassins managed to track them down and force the two princes to abandon their family and flee with only accompanied by Badr, their loyal freedman. Seeing Abbasid's horsemen closing in, they jumped into the river and swam across. Unable to beat the strong current and persuaded by the horsemen yelling their promise of no harm, the young Prince Yahya gave up and turned back to near shore. Ignoring his brother, who screamed desperately trying to make him come across, Yahya then quickly seized and beheaded by the Abbasids while Abdul Rahman watching from the far shore. So overcome with fear, both Abdul Rahman and Badr ran day and night until they exhausted, through the deserts of Palestine, Sinai into Egypt. Governor of Egypt was Abdul Rahman bin Habib al-Fihri, who refused to submit to the Abbasids and invited fleeing members of the Umayyad to take refuge in his land, but not long until he changed his mind. Habib saw the Umayyads as threat to his ambitions and started to show hostility to them. Enough sign for Abdul Rahman, who then decided to flee to the highland and hide among the Nafsa Berber tribe, his mother's tribe. Disguised themselves with a low profile to avoid attention from both the Abbasids and al-Fihri's agents. When Ibn Habib's soldiers searched the Berbers' camp, they were saved by the chieftain's wife, who hid them inside her personal belonging. Immediately afterwards, Abdul Rahman and Badr left the camp and went west. Finally, Abdul Rahman and Badr reached Morocco in year 755. 5 years after they left Syria. Their next step would be crossing the straits into Andalusia, a land completely unknown to both of them. But things were already complicated in Andalusia for the last 10 years. The Berbers' rebellion against Umayyad in year 740 spread into Andalusia, added to an already existing tensions between factions among the ruling Muslims of Syrian, Yemeni and Berbers' origin. Making more complicated, the nominal ruler was Yusuf ibn Abdurrahman al-Fihri, a cousin of Ibn Habib. He ruled from Cordoba with his Syrian general, al-Sumail, defending northern territories from Saragossa. Abdul Rahman decided to move cautiously. He sent Badr first to assess the situation and try to gather supports among former Umayyad clans. Though he failed to convince al-Sumail and the Syrian, Badr managed to gather supports from the Yemeni and the Berbers. Finally, in August 755, Abdul Rahman and his companions landed at the coast of Al-Mankar. He was welcomed by 300 cavalry, who then escorted the prince into the city of Malaga. People came from nearby cities to see and pay respects to the prince they thought already dead. Many of them brought gifts. One famous story tells that one of the gifts was a slave girl that Abdul Rahman humbly refused and returned to her previous master. The news of his arrival quickly spread all over Andalusia and finally reached Yusuf al-Fihri. The emir and his general al-Sumail considered the Umayyad prince as a new threat to their power. To neutralize it, they only have two options: either offering Abdul Rahman to marry one of their daughters or eliminating him. But before they could deal with this matter, they were forced to march north to suppress the rebellion in Saragossa and Pamplona. Seeing the opportunity, and with his rapidly growing popularity, Abdul Rahman quickly assembled forces and captured the city of Seville without any resistance. Al-Fihri turned his army back towards south to face Abdul Rahman and his followers. The two armies met on the plain of Musera, just outside the city of Cordoba, in May 756. As this was his first real battle, many of his men, especially among the Yemeni Arabs, doubted him. Watching the prince mounted on a fine Spanish horse, those soldiers began to whisper that such a fine horse would be an excellent choice to escape from battle. After hearing the rumor, Abdul Rahman went to the Yemeni chief, who was riding a mule named Lightning. He told the chief that he found it difficult to control his horse and offered him to exchange his horse with the mule. And the chief definitely agreed. A smart move that won him trust and respects from his soldiers. He led his army to the battlefield and rejected every terms offered by Yusuf al-Fihri. After a fierce and long fight, Abdul Rahman and his troops emerged victorious. Al-Fihri and Sumail managed to escape and reorganized, while Abdul Rahman marched to take the capital city, Cordoba. Al-Fihri then fled to Toledo to gather new army, but Abdul Rahman acted quickly and dispatched his newly appointed governor of Seville to chase him. Yusuf al-Fihri was killed at Toledo and his head was sent to Cordoba. Abdul Rahman then proclaimed himself as Emir of Al-Andalus, an independent state. While he's still consolidating his territories and secured them from al-Fihri's supporters, another challenge approached. The Frankish kingdom and the Abbasids Caliphate formed an alliance against their common enemy, the Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba. The Frankish king Pipunk III attacked Septimania and captured the city of Narbonne from a Muslim in 759. While Abdul Rahman struggled to defend his northern frontier, the Abbasid Caliph Abu Ja'far Al Mansur ordered his governor of Africa, Al-Allah ibn Muqith, to invade Andalusia. The Abbasid contingent led by Al-Allah landed near the city of Beja in 763. He gathered local supporters and marched to Cordoba. This forced Abdul Rahman to abandon his capital and chose to defend at well-fortified city of Carmona. With only limited troops available, because most Andalusian leaders were choosing not to take side and rather waiting for the result of this conflict. Abdul Rahman were outnumbered and under siege for 2 months. Realizing the supply of food and water, as well as his troops' morale getting low, Rahman personally picked 700 of his best men and led them to the main gate. He set a bonfire and told his men that time had come for them to come out and make one final charge instead of die in hunger. When the main gate opened, Abdul Rahman and his men stormed the 10 times larger besieging forces. Unexpected and unprepared, the Abbasids' forces were completely destroyed while their commanders, including Al-Allah, were also killed in battle. Rahman then ordered his men to collect the heads of Al-Allah and his commanders and sent them to the Abbasids' Caliph Al Mansur. Upon receiving the package, Caliph Al Mansur reported to have exclaimed, "Praise be to God for placing the sea between us." But Caliph Al Mansur respected Abdul Rahman as much as he hated him. He gave his archenemy title of the Falcon of Quraysh. It was a highly respected title among the Quraysh, as a falcon is the symbol of the Arabic tribe where both the Umayyad and the Abbasid originally belonged to. What makes it even more honorable that it was given by his enemy. Once among his courtiers in Baghdad, Caliph Al Mansur said that the one who deserved the title was Abdul Rahman, who escaped the spear, traversed the deserts, crossed the sea into the unknown land to him, where he established his kingdom, subdued the frontiers, exterminated the rebels and humiliated more powerful enemies. He made the cities prosperous, organized armies and founded a mighty empire. And he did it all by himself, aided only by his own wit and perseverance. But the conflict between them was not over yet. Al-Mansur appointed a new governor of Africa to replace Al-Allah. He chose none other than Abdul Rahman ibn Habib al-Fihri. He arrived in year 777 and set up his base in Tudmir, Murcia. Though it was only 2 years before he fled from the Umayyad and killed in the mountain near Valencia, Ibn Habib managed to influence several local pro-Abbasids leaders, especially the governor of Barcelona, Suleiman, and the governor of Saragossa, Hussein ibn Yahya. The two of them, along with 2 other governors of northern Andalus, visited the king of France, Charlemagne, and asked him supports for their upcoming revolt against the Umayyad, which the king later agreed to. Charlemagne led his massive Christian armies to Saragossa in 778. Hearing the news of approaching Christian army, Abdul Rahman showed his political skills. Instead of directly facing this massive army, he chose to play his enemies against each other. He managed to turn Hussein ibn Yahya against both Suleiman and Charlemagne. When Charlemagne reached outskirts of Saragossa with his massive forces, they were welcomed and joined by Suleiman of Barcelona. But Hussein shut the city gate and refused to let Suleiman and the Frankish in. Charlemagne was humiliated and had to take the city by force. But the Muslims gave Charlemagne and his troops the toughest battle of their career. They were forced to retreat after besieging the city for a month. The devastations of his campaign didn't end there. While retreating, he was attacked in Roncesvalles Pass and his rearguards were wiped out by the Basques' retaliation for the earlier sacking of their capital, Pamplona, by the Franks. The Basques were helped by Suleiman's men who's trying to release their master. Blamed and imprisoned by Charlemagne for his failure. Suleiman managed to escape and return to Saragossa in 780. Only to be killed by the order of his former ally, Hussein ibn Yahya. With no more massive Charlemagne's forces and Suleiman's troops to face, Abdul Rahman sent his army toward Saragossa to retake the city. Hussein surrendered the city to the Umayyad in year 781 after a long siege. With now his territory secured, Rahman could focus on building his legacy. He laid the base for making Al-Andalus a land of prosperity and flowering culture. His moderation and generosity earned him respect from both friends and foes. Kind-hearted and merciful, he was extremely accessible. He used to visit the sick and dying as well as attended funerals and pray at the mosque alongside his people. He repaired roads, organized postal service, built baths, bridges, castles and irrigations. He decorated Cordoba with palaces, public buildings and gardens, filled with fruit trees and ornamental plants imported from the east. His splendid palace, Munyat al-Rusufa, was resembled and named after his ancestral palace in Syria where he had lived his youth. The palace became the wonder of his day and was talked about for centuries. But his crowning achievement began in year 786. He purchased the old Visigothic church from the Christian and started the construction of a magnificent structure, the Great Mosque of Cordoba, La Mezquita. An architectural masterpiece which later became a model of future mosques in Al-Andalus. Emir Abdul Rahman I not only saved Al-Andalus from disintegration. He displayed great ability and statesmanship in making it one of the most advanced nations in that era. Known as the immigrant, he was regarded by historians as one of the greatest Muslim rulers. Abdul Rahman passed away in year 788 after a glorious 32 years of reign. He chose his second and most pious son, Hisham I as successor. His descendants continued to rule for another 2.5 centuries, led Al-Andalus to the Golden Age and became the center of civilization in the Western world. Left a romantic and exciting saga of a prince that a novelist could only be dreamed of. Yet more stunning as it is a true story.